Cider celebrities are flocking to CiderDays 2.0 coming this November 4th through the 6th. And you might be wondering, well, who is a cider celebrity? In this case, it is in both the form of a person and what is in the bottle. You're going to be hearing all about that coming up in this here episode 342 of Cider Chat. And you also be getting the wild yeast are in the cider house. Yeah, they're always in the cider house because wild yeast are just kind of floating around in the space. It's just what we have everywhere. Whether or not you see it or not, or even are aware of it, wild yeast are here.
Indeed, they are, Rhea. And we have a question about wild yeast in this here episode.
That's right, Perry. I think it's coming in from Indiana from Chris.
Yes, from Chris, who has a couple questions.
All right, we'll get to that because, well, it's this time of year and cider making is what it's all about. We want folks to feel successful. So I have that on my docket. We have the wild yeast in the house and a whole bunch of news about CiderDays 2.0 coming up on November 4th through the 6th. Anything else I should know?
Probably.
Barry.
Right. Let's go on with the show.
Nice touch there, Palms. I like hearing that bubbling carboy going away. Look, we're talking here behind the scenes and not really including everybody out there in Ciderville, so allow me to introduce myself. My name is Rhea Wincaller, and I am the producer and cider MC of this weekly podcast, where we speak with makers, cider enthusiasts, and folks within the cider trade from around the world. And coming into this here episode 342, you heard a little bit from the Talking Palms. Initially you heard from the Wild Yeast and also Perry Pear.
Yes, it's me, Perry Pear. Hello, hello.
Mr. Quince.
Hello.
And we also have the Medlars in the house. Together they make up the Talking Palms and help me with the production of this here podcast. And this week we have a humdinger of a podcast because it's part 2 of Going to Cider Days. And the subtitle of this here episode is called Cider Celebrities. And in this case, the celebrity is two-faced. One, it's of course people and yes, palms too, Mr. Prince. Palms. Of course. Which, by the way, we don't want to forget about mentioning that there's going to be a pomological exhibition, and this is put on by Matt Kaminsky, a.k.a. Gnarly Pippin. It's going to be all day on Friday up in Ashfield, the town of Ashfield. So you can find that at the CiderDays 2.0 schedule of events. Check it out. There's a whole list. You want to have that page bookmarked, like make a screenshot of it so you know the events that are happening and keep on checking back because even after this episode goes live, there is most likely going to be some updates. If things change, definitely go to that schedule and we'll try to keep you in the loop as much as possible. So we talked about people, we talked about the palms, and the other cider celebrity is, well, what's in the glass or in your bottle. And there's a lot to talk about there because we have some really special releases that have not been really live to the public at this point, and super savory. It's over the top. I mean, I just feel like this event has just escalated to the most delectable point possible. It just keeps on getting better. So let's take a little pause here, and we're going to be right back with all of that. Even with the wild yeast and all the palms here in the cider house, we are pretty organized because there's a lot of boxes here that are all set up, ready in their station to be going out for the different events. And the first kickoff event for CiderDays 2.0 happens on Friday evening, and that is the Calvados and American Apple Brandy tasting. It's a guided tasting being presented by Ambrosia Borowski and myself, and that's all going to be taking place at Hawks and Reeds up on the 4th floor, totally accessible. We have 7 different brandies, so 3 American Apple Brandies and 4 Calvados. This is from France. Calvados is a trademark name, meaning that just because you're in France and you're distilling cider into apple brandy doesn't mean that you could automatically call it Calvados. You have to be producing this in a specific region of France in order to call that Calvados. So we have Calvados and American Apple Brandy. We have the oldest distiller in the U.S. They started distilling this family. The same family is involved, right? They started distilling in 1698, got their official license in 1780. So if you go to their bonded warehouse, because that's what it's all about, having a bonded warehouse so you know what's exactly in the bottle. It's a consumer protection, really. On that warehouse is the number 1. So they're the first commercial licensed distiller in America. That's Lairs and Company. And we're going to kick off that night with the Lairs 7.5, which is apple brandy that's been aged in charred oak barrels for 7.5 years from this family that's been doing it for over 300 years. I have been in that barrel room with Lisa Laird Dunn and her father, Larry Lairs, walking about. You can listen to that on an episode. I have a 2-part episode all about Lairs and Company, talking about their family's history and how they're making it. It's absolutely fascinating. And Lisa Lair is going to be at that tasting. She's going to be at all the events at CiderDays 2.0. Talk about rock star and celebrity in our community. So we're going to have that. We're also going to have an apple brandy from Flag Hill Winery and Distillery up in New Hampshire, not too far from the coast. So if you're up at Hampton Beach, this is a destination location to go to. You have the winery and the distillery. They have a lot of delicious products. And this apple brandy that is so smooth and delectable. I have an episode with them. We also have an apple brandy from Beaver Pond Distillery here in Massachusetts. In my special spot of Ciderville, I mean, I almost feel like I could fly a kite over to the distillery from my house. And that's led by Jerry Friedman. He's going to be there that evening. I think he's going to have some of his family, so they'll be woot-wooting in the crowd. And he's making apple brandy. He's been doing this for a while. Also aged in small format barrels this time. Okay, so there's going to be more contact on that in those barrels with the liquid. So those are the 3 American apple brandies we're going to be tasting. And then we have the Calvados. We have 4 Calvados. And first off, tip of the glass to the folks at Heavenly Spirits, which are importers based in Massachusetts. They are helping us out with 2 different brands. One is from Chef Coeur, which means heart warmer, and Cloque Pepin, which is all about an apple that rattles. You got to come to this talk to hear about that. They're also setting up Ryan and Casey's with cider from France, a pear cider from France, Pommeau, and a Poirinella, which is fresh pressed pear juice with pear Calvados, right? Because they can't call it Pommeau in this region, so they make up their own name called Poirinella. That's all going to be at Ryan and Casey's. Don't wait for their in-store tasting on Saturday. It's going to be packed, and maybe some of the stuff is going to sell out. Go there ahead of time because they're getting product in now. They're setting it up, and this stuff is going to go fast. They're going to have those bottles of the Chef Coeur and the Cloque Pepin. We also have Domaine Dupont, going to have a 12-year-old Domaine Dupont to be tasting. And yes, there's going to be Domaine Dupont at Ryan and Casey's. And then the 4th Calvados is from Château Du Breuil, and that is a Calvados that has been aged in a port barrel. Whew. I mean, it's the first I've ever had like that, and I want to say super, super smooth. Ryan and Casey only has 3 bottles of that Calvados. And it might have only 2 bottles because I think I'm going to get one of those bottles because it is that freaking good. So, that's the Calvados. That's the American Brandy. That's happening on Friday night. Tickets will be kind of up to the door unless you start hearing that they're sold out because we added some spaces there. There was a big set. It's being taken down, so we have room to kind of add some more spaces. But don't delay because the tickets are flying off the shelf at this point. There's links in the show notes to all the tickets. Go to CiderDays 2.0. Just Google it. Look for tickets. You'll find it. It is there. So that's like from 6 to 8:30. And there's something else happening that evening. Let's take a little pause here, and we'll be right back. Starting at 7 p.m. at the Wheelhouse Bar at Hawks and Reeds is a cider tapped takeover. And we're going to have 6 different kegs of cider on hand. One from Artifact Cider Project, which is called Coleraine Russet. One from New Salem Cider. We're going to have the Core Appeal. We're going to have a rosé from Valley View Farm, which is based right down the road from Artifact Cider Project, a beautiful cider tasting room there. And then we have 2 kegs from Ciders of Spain and a Simply Dry from Carlson Orchards. Now, there's a little bit of a cider celebrity here beside everything that's going to be on draft that evening, and that is Paul Carenti, who is one of the CiderDays OG founders. And if you don't know what I mean by OG, because a lot of people have been asking me, I kind of throw it off, a little bit of slang. It means original gangsta, or as we lovingly call him, Chef Paul. He will be at this cider tap takeover on Friday night. And he is pouring cider that he is now making commercially for Carlson's Orchard, which is out in Harvard, Massachusetts. Paul is the dude who really helped get cider on the map in the U.S. He wrote the book, The Art of Cider Making. It came out in 1995, so it was one of the catalysts for getting Cider Days kicked off in 1994 when he met up with Judith Maloney of West County Cider, and they came together, joined forces, and they started this whole process of getting cider on the map by offering a one-day event called Cider Days. He's going to be there, and you might know Paul at other past Cider Days events because he has done workshops on helping you kind of solve the mystery of what's going on with your cider. If you want to talk to Paul, I would recommend coming to these events because you know he's going to be there Friday night at the Calvados tasting. He's going to be at the Tap Takeover. The next day, he's going to be at the cider pop-up at the Pushkin right across the street, pouring some cider from Carlson's Orchard. It's just going to be so nice to see Paul Carenti walking about at CiderDays 2.0. And that evening, on Saturday, he'll be at the cider dinner, dining and enjoying a whole bunch of cider, which I haven't got to yet. There is some updates about that dinner that I need to let you know. But first, I want to take a little pause here and bring you into Saturday morning's workshops that you do not want to miss. We have 2 morning workshops. The first one kicks off at 9 a.m. in the morning, and that's with the John Bunker, an author of a number of Apple books, the founder of Fedco Seeds and Fedco Trees. The guy has been talking about apples for as long as I can remember, and he is just an amazing hero on our landscape. So a definite cider celebrity talking about orchard care for homeowners, because like John, I'm passionate about helping homeowners understand what's going on with those fruit trees. How can I have them bear fruit that is edible and not all scabby and blistered and not good? You know, you want to have those fruit trees really producing so you could pass that on to the next generation, pass on those skills. So that's what that workshop's about. And then right after that, we're going to be hearing from Lisa Lair Dunn. The presentation is on the history of Applejack from the 9th generation Lair. Lair's family, who is definitely the OG of all OGs distiller in America. I mean, George Washington wrote about Lair's The Applejack recipe, asking for the recipe. Abraham Lincoln served Lair's in his tavern. I mean, she's going to be there doing a presentation on the history of Applejack, and she's going to be having poured 3 different products. One is the Jersey Lightning, then the 10th generation, and then a blended Applejack. And you're going to hear about the history on how Lair's petitioned the government and was able to get legislation changed. I mean, this is just like an incredible presentation, one you do not want to miss, with the global ambassador for the oldest distiller in the country. So that's happening. Then we have a little break. You get a little bit of food, get revved up, and at 1 p.m., there's going to be Morris dancers outside. There's 3 different groups, and one group is an all-women group of Morris dancers called Wake Robin. I'm so stoked. They're going to be right outside on the Common in Greenfield. We're bringing the Apple energy into Greenfield. Super stoked. And then right at the same time, starting at 12 to 3, you could kind of be going back and forth. Go over to Ryan and Casey's because they're going to have the in-store tasting there. So you don't have to you could just walk to these events, Maybe leave your car in one spot to stock it up with all the stuff that you're going to be getting at Ryan and Casey's. But this is kind of a walkable situation all in downtown Greenfield. And at 2 to 4:30 at the Pushkin, right across from the Common. You're going to see the banner on the building. There's photos up on social media, is the cider pop-up. I'm super excited about this. We're going to have What Drams May Come doing repurposed barrel furniture right there. We're going to have Ciders of Spain doing a pouring. We're going to have Paul Carenti doing a pouring from Carlson's Orchard. We're going to have John Hughes, who is a renowned musician, playing the kora. And he also plays African drums. That's going to be for the first hour, some background music. We're also going to have an author's table. So we'll have Claude Jacquelaire. We'll also have Matt Kaminsky. So they'll be signing books. Matt has a new book coming out. Go to the show notes to see what the cover looks like. We have a sneak preview. And we're also going to have my cousin, Michelle Olanik. She is the owner of Moe's Fudge Factor up in Shelburne Falls. And she's coming down from Shelburne Falls. And she's going to be dipping real time into warm fudge, her signature warm fudge, apples on a stick. And I'll tell you, I had one of these. Truth, I've had 2 so far this fall. These are so good. And I know that some folks are coming to CiderDays 2.0, and maybe you're coming solo and you are leaving somebody at home, maybe watching the kids, or for whatever reason, not everybody in your little tribe could come. Well, this is a wonderful thing to bring home, a fudge-dipped apple. Oh, it's just crazy. It's going to smell so good in there. Vermont Quince is also going to be there. You've heard Nan Stefan on this here podcast talking about her Grow Quince initiative, and she's going to be at the Cider Pop-Up, which is fantastic. She'll have some products for sale. It's going to be really festive, a cool scene. There's going to be talks up in the second floor in the president's old office, because this event is taking place at the Pushkin, which is an old bank building. And so you're going to hear from Claude Jacquelaire, you're going to hear from Matt Kaminsky, and you're also going to hear from Ciders of Spain talking about Spanish ciders. 3 different talks, all taking place beginning at 2:30. So a lot of action there. If you want to have a sample, there's a $5 glass fee. You get to have a souvenir CiderDays 2.0 glass to take home. Fun time. And may I mention, in the vault in the bank is going to be a little cider chat set up. So that's going to be fun. Check out what's in the vault. Don't miss it. That happens from 2 to 4:30. And then at 6 p.m. is the cider dinner. And I have some great updates about that you want to hear. Walking through the orchards. The first thing you need to know is that tickets for the cider dinner close on this coming Sunday, October 30th. It's going to be, that's it. That's your last chance to sign up for the cider dinner. And truthfully, the way these tickets are going, there might not be any tickets left. So I hope that you hear this podcast in time to get your tickets, because this is truly a cider celebrity event for so many reasons. Look, we've been in a pandemic for 2 years. It's been tough, folks. We haven't seen each other, and Cider Days was always about bringing us all back together. And we're going to have a celebration of women in cider with some of the key women that I know. Just some. Some of them are going to be in the audience, and I can't get everybody up there on stage at the same time. So bear with me this year. We're just going to be cranking it out, of course, with Judith Maloney of West County Cider. We're going to have some cider from that little cidery called West County that's been around since 1984. You've heard me talk about it so many times. Farnham Hill, we're going to have Louisa Spencer of Farnham Hill. We're going to have Nicole Bloom of Carr's Cider House, and Garwood Hemp of Ragged Hill Cider. Now, the cider that we're going to be having from Ragged Hill is called Flora. This is a high-gravity cider. It comes in at 11.7%, so it's more kind of like a wine, but it was made with like a blend of ciders from 2018 to 2020, and it is just, it's exquisite. It's absolutely exquisite. I had this. It is a treasured cider. This is kind of like a special release. It's going to captivate everyone there. So we have that coming from Ragged Hill. And then from Eden Specialty Cider, we're going to have 2 never-before-released ciders from Eden. One is a still cider that is made with a single variety apple called Golden Russet. So we're going to have that during dinner. And then, of course, Eleanor Leger, because she is just this amazing person. I adore her. If you don't know who she is, she founded Eden Specialty Cider up in Vermont, up on the edge of Vermont to Canada, I think back in 2007. And she's just been cranking out so many amazing ciders over the years, works with a great team up there, and has become quite well known for ice cider. She has helped so many people learn how to make ice cider. And so I kind of call her the queen of ice cider. And she and I were talking. Oh, I want to say one more thing. She's also the current president of the American Cider Association. So she's doing double duty all over the map. Well, she contacted me and said, I'd really like to bring this heirloom blend barrel-aged ice cider to the dinner. Is that okay? Oh, and by the way, this barrel-aged ice cider, use barrels from Lairs and Company. Oh my God. Yeah, Eleanor, please. I'll crawl across the floor for that. Are you kidding me? Even Lisa Lair Dunn doesn't know about this. So you might be hearing this before she does, which is so exciting. It's just going to be so thrilling. Let me take this one step further. This is a 5-course gluten-free meal made by Aunt Kathy's Kitchen, which is a local catering service. They also have a restaurant. Oh, all gluten-free. So you don't have to worry about that. There is a vegan and veggie option. So if that's how you roll, there is that too. You just got to let us know. So we have the dinner. Dessert is going to be an apple crisp with an infusion of Lair's Apple Brandy. They're straight Apple Brandy. And now, on the side, we're going to have heirloom blended barrel-aged ice cider that was barrel-aged in Lair's casks from Eden Specialty Cider. Lift me up. But wait, it gets better because this event, it is an event. It's a cider dinner, but it's not your typical cider dinner because I'm going to be emceeing it. And we have little gift packets from Fermentis, who's one of the sponsors of Cider Chat. Well, Fermentis has been so kind to send us these nice little bags with yeast for all the guests at the cider dinner. So if you're coming there, you're in for a treat. It's really going to be, I think it's the best cider dinner of 2022. Hang out with all these cider celebrities that are coming. A lot of the people that I've already mentioned and more that I haven't mentioned I already have tickets to this event. They're coming. They're on the guest list. They are coming. You want to hang out in celebratory energy. What else can I say? All right. I hope to see you there. It's going to be freaking phenomenal.
You gotta grab that luce. You gotta bust that thing. Get your kicks on the street. Gotta click, clack, step back. Oh, you gots to skeet. It's a rat-a-tat-a, 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 bala. Rat-a-tat-a, 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 holla. I don't wanna be pushed like I do the pushing. When it comes to the cheddar, keep it under the cushion. I don't wanna be ganked like I do the gank. And when it comes to the cake, beat me you think. I don't wanna be pushed like I do the pushing. When it comes to the cheddar, keep it under the cushion. I don't wanna be ganked like I do the gank. And when it comes to the cake, beat me you think.
That, dear friends, is just the events that are ticketed or free at the Cider Pop-Up, all happening in downtown Greenfield. But wait, there is more, because also in Greenfield, you could go over to Four Phantoms. If you come in early on Thursday night, there, Drew Phillips, who was the head cider maker at Artifact Cider Project, is going to be doing a talk on collaborating both beer and cider together. There's going to be a cider collab on tap made by Drew, an amazing little brewery. So whether you like beer or cider, you got it all. That weekend, they're going to have apple miso caramel pie. They have apple sausages. They have other events. And that talk is going to be taking place again on Sunday afternoon at 1 p.m. at Four Phantoms right in Greenfield. Don't forget about that in-store tasting at Ryan and Casey's Liquor Store, Saturday from 12 to 3. Over in Northfield, you have 4 Star Farms, the brewery at 4 Star Farms, and they have one juice where they made 2 different ciders. One is a wild and one is cultured yeast. Check that out. Going up into Vermont, you could stop at Scott's Farm, which is an amazing place to get a wide variety of apples. And guess what? Now they have cider. Yes, they have cider. So check it out at the Pippin Cafe. Over in the Berkshires in North Adams by Mass Mocha is the Berkshire Cider Project, a lovely, lovely cidery with amazing ciders to be had. So that is a destination, whether you're coming or going to CiderDays 2.0 or all year round. Check out Berkshire Cider Project. Artifact Cider Project in Florence is going to have extended hours. So they're right down the road. So if you're coming up into this area, you could stop there. If you need homebrew supplies, check out Beerology in Northampton. They always have the supplies that you need, including yeast. I may have some packets, so you could always hit me up from our good friends at Fermentis. On both Saturday and Sunday, all day at New Salem Cider out in New Salem is events for home cider makers. In fact, on Sunday, November 6th, April Woodard is going to be doing her yearly cider making course. So check that out and bring your own to share. It is a banner event. You will likely see me there on Sunday afternoon. Now let's get into actually attending these events and some of the things that you want to think about. I know folks are flying into both the Boston airport from out of state and maybe the Hartford airport. If you're flying into Boston, do know that there are cideries out that way you could stop at, such as the Artifact Cider Project in Cambridge. Has a lovely tasting room there. Google it. And as you're coming to the western part of Massachusetts called Western Mass, of course, right? Makes sense. You'll be coming most likely on Route 2 because that's the most direct route coming out. First of all, use an app to notify you of cops on that road because it is kind of like a 55 mile per hour highway, and that could kind of screw you up, and we don't want that to happen. So watch out for the police out there. They do keep an eye out. We want you to be safe. One of the things that will slow you down gladly is you'll be coming through a section of Route 2 in the town of Irving, and there is a little country store called Fleece. It's spelled F-I-L-S, and you have to slow down there. Like suddenly this major highway all gets narrowed down to a 2-lane road. There's a whole story behind that, and I'm not going to get into it, but there is this store. It'll be on the right side of the road heading west on Route 2 called Fliss, not Fleece. I get it mixed up. It's kind of a weird name, but it works. These people are awesome. And it's a cool little stop. They have a really good food. They have a nice selection of cider there. It's just been taking over. They're like rocking the foodie scene there. Stop in for some snacks, perhaps. They will help you out. Tell them Cider Chat sent you. Now you're kind of cruising out to Western Mass, the heart of Cider Day. So that's coming in from Boston. If you're coming up from Hartford, right, it's like a much shorter drive. It's only an hour from the airport there up into Greenfield. This is a route that you'd be able to stop at Beerology along the way, or Artifact Cider Project in town, or The Dirty Truth, which is a craft beer and cider bar in Northampton. You can stop at those two locations. Check it out. Northampton's a fun town. You could grab some food there. There's a River Valley Co-op. Make your way up. In Greenfield proper, there is a co-op called Greenfield Co-op, I think. That's what it's called. That's a great place to get food, too. There's a lot of little foodie stops in Greenfield. You're going to be okay. There's, Chinese, Indian. It's not, New York City. We do the best we can. We're in the country. Deal with it. You can tell I'm on the roll, right? I want to tell you about breakfast, though, on Saturday, or Sunday or Friday, whenever you need it. One of the places that I would recommend folks to go to have some breakfast that's open really early in the morning is Denny's. This is not Denny's in the big franchise. This is Denny's. Look it up. It's a locally owned Denny's breakfast joint. I think it closes at 2:00. You're going to get a solid classic kind of like Americana breakfast there that will hold you over for going to the history of Applejack at 10:30 in the morning when it starts, or whenever it starts before then. I think it starts at 10:15 on Saturday. So you want to have some breakfast before you go and start drinking 3 different samples of brandy. That is some of the things about just your drive here. There's lodging everywhere. Check out Airbnb. Get on that, because I know things are being swallowed up from folks who have been planning for this for a while. Now, the weather, it's changeable. As they say in New England, if you don't like the weather, wait a minute. That was a quote from Mark Twain. What I'm seeing right now is mid-50s for that weekend. I don't know. It's a little bit far out from where I am talking to you now to the actual event. It could be changeable. We could get snow flurries. Classically, we have been seeing a beautiful weekend for Cider Days. Over the past 28 years that, I've been doing Cider Days, it's always come through, often very spectacular on Sunday. But it can be changeable. So dress in layers. Bring a warm hat. Definitely bring a warm hat. Bring layers to hang out with. All the Cider 2.0 events are indoors, and so it'll be warm there. You won't have to worry. That's a nice thing. But make sure that you prepare for that and keep an eye on the weather. Hopefully no rain or snow. Getting around for Cider Days, if you're going to go anywhere outside of Greenfield, yes, you are going to need a car. And there are events happening at all these different locations I'm talking about and more that I haven't talked about. You got to do some research here. We're all kind of doing different events here, and I'm in charge of CiderDays 2.0. For CiderDays 2.0, you could stay in town and get a little rideshare ride over to the event and just walk around in Greenfield, which is kind of nice because we have some kick-ass drinks that are on the schedule, which makes driving, something you should be concerned about, I think. So watch out for that. Please drive safely, drink responsibly, and consider staying in town for that time in Greenfield. It's pretty easy to do because you just have to walk across the street from Hawks and Reed to the Pushkin and back again, or just down to Ryan and Casey's Liquors and get stocked up there. A lot to be had right there, but for the most part, if you come in this area, public transportation is not as great as we want it to be, which leads me to parking. There is parking behind the town hall in Greenfield, and some of those spots are free. In fact, after 5 p.m. in Greenfield, the meter parking is all free, so you're good to go there. So for most of these events, you won't have to worry about it. But during the day on Saturday morning, you could park behind basically Hawks and Reeds. There's a little back alley there. Check it out. There's parking there. There's also a new parking garage. And then behind the Pushkin, the block behind the Pushkin, there's a large parking area there that's all open. Make sure to watch the meter. You want to be careful for that. Greenfield is small Americana town, mixed town of all kinds of folks there, which is really nice. It's right off the highway. It's one major main street, lots of little banks there, and a pretty cool setup. Hawks and Reeds, people will be checking in at the door there. There'll be a little table. You'll be getting a little wristband. You will need a proof of ID. At the Pushkin Cider Pop-Up, that is free to the public to attend all the talks and walk about. But for any of the tasting, if you're going to do the Ciders of Spain tasting or any of the tastings with Carlson's Orchard, Paul Carenti, you need to have a proof of of ID. You need to have a little wristband, and there is a small nominal purchase, a CiderDays 2.0 glass. One of the other recommendations I guess I should add here is that, pack a little snacks for yourself. You're going to be drinking a lot of different things. Make sure that you keep your belly full. Bring a water bottle. Fill up. We have good water in this area. You could fill up at the tap. It's not a problem. And then also, if you can, and you make cider, bring some cider to share. That's a cool thing to do, and there's going to be lots of opportunities for that, because one of the coolest things about Cider Days is when you hear that echoing cry of, "Here, try this." And I will be doing that. I'll probably be doing that more on Sunday, because I'm going to be straight out on Friday and Saturday, which leads me to my last and final statement. Please introduce yourself. Please don't be shy coming up to me and say, "Hi, my name is so-and-so. I'm a patron of Cider Chat. Let me know how I know you." I'm kind of one of those folks who do really well in chaos. I wrote a book called Leading Chaos, but I will be kind of in that tornado brain, and I may have met you or I won't know your name, but I need to be grounded from that point, because I really want to say hi to you. I really, really do. Please don't be shy about that, and don't be offended if I have this blank stare on my face. It's not about you. It's all about me and where my head is at, rolling up to producing this event and making it as best as possible for everyone attending. So again, please do not be shy about that. I am down with meeting everybody and really, really want to. So that's it from here. Is there anything else on our list that we need to talk about?
That was quite fast, Rhea, but you do have one more thing.
I do. What is that?
A question from a listener on cider making.
Oh, yes, of course. All right, let's bring that up on the screen here. All right, let's get right into this email written by Christopher from Fort Wayne, Indiana. Christopher writes, "I've listened to most of your Cider Chat podcasts, but this is my first time making cider." And I'm going to shorten your letter here a little bit, Christopher, if you don't mind taking kind of the main pieces. You want some advice on fermenting your first batch of cider. And you have 2 glass carboys filled with cider. You got fresh pressed local cider from an orchard, and you are filled up with 2 6.5-gallon carboys. These are glass carboys. So you're making some reference to Claude Jacquelaire's book, The New Cider Maker Handbook, where he talked about doing a dose of Camden tablets to help a wild ferment in what is called a partially sterilized must by adding the Camden tablets. And that's exactly what you did. After the first and second day, some of the solids started settling on the bottom. So you start seeing the precipitants dropping out of solution on the bottom. And it sounds like there was some early activation of the yeast that had died from the Camden tablets. Well, that could be both just the precipitants kind of dropping out, and I'm not sure about early activating yeast that died from the Camden tablets. It's just kind of like the schmutz. Let's just call it the schmutz that's dropping out. With half a dosage, you're looking to eliminate spoilage yeast, bacteria, and it also eliminates most of the piculate yeast, but leaves the Saccharomyces yeast unharmed. And that's what you're asking. Yeah. What you're doing is trying to thin it out, right? Thin it out so you're getting the strongest yeast to survive, or to totally eliminate any yeast at all in that solution. That's what the Camden tablets can do. And most folks would then be pitching a cultured yeast. But in this case, you're following what Claude is saying and going with a wild ferment. So I want to just put a pin in that and go on with your letter, and we'll kind of reverse back to some of my thoughts on that. You wrote on your 4th day to me that there was a turbulent fermentation that you started to observe, so it's getting a little vigorous, and now you're trying to work out what you would like to do with that. One of these carboys you'd like to end up bottling dry and unaltered, and maybe do at least one racking to condition and ferment further, and then bottle. All right, so let's stop with that first one because the next one you're asking a fruit addition to the cider type of question. So for that first piece there, you could do what Claude does, add the Camden tablets. Sure, you could do that. If I'm going to go for a wild ferment, I don't add any of the Camden tablets at all. The metabisulfite, I wouldn't add that at all. I would just let the wild ferment take. And what's going to happen in my mind there is that the strongest yeast is going to survive. It's going to fight out the other ones and come through and shine bright. So this time you're doing that. Maybe next time you just want to skip that process, save the little tablets and just let the wild go. But now that you're here, keep on watching it. Monitor the temperature. It's going to keep on dropping down, and we're in late October right now. So I would say in a month's time, you want to rack it off if it seems like it's really dropped into solution. But because it's a wild ferment, they typically take longer. So it might still be kind of kicking away there, just a very slow fermentation. That's a cool thing about the wild ferment. It's kind of like an aging process in the fermentation, if you will, which is kind of a mixed up way of saying it, but that's how I see it. So you might be looking at 2 months before your first racking, which would bring you into late December sometime. It's not all going to be dropped out of solution, so it's still going to be most likely very hazy. I would do at least 2, if not 3 racks of this over the course of from now until, let's say, April, and kind of monitor that. So you're kind of pulling that off after your first vigorous fermentation. And then bottle condition, right? You might even get a little pet net there if the little yeast buggers are still going. So that's what I would do with the first one. And then next time, I would advise just skipping the Camden to begin with, and just stopping it right there. And then maybe, each time that you rack it, what I do is then I pitch a little bit of the Camden, the metabisulfite, into the solution, just a tiny little bit, maybe like a quarter, not 3. I rarely put 3 in there. I'm not a commercial maker, so I don't find that I need to really dose it up, and I've been okay. So that's what I would do with that first one. On the second one, you talked about me speaking about in the past where I used to do a lot of fruit additions, and that there's a lot of different views on when to add fruit to a cider. Now, this question is going to come up to a lot of folks right now who are in the process of picking up fresh pressed apple juice at your local cider mill and wanting to make a cider out of that with some type of fruit, be it a banana or blueberries or peaches, or let's say you want to add some spicy thing like ginger. So when I do a fermentation like this, I can only speak from my own, I would do that right in the beginning. So right when I get that juice, I put in the fruit at that point. And I'm always looking for good, clean, quality fruit that I then freeze and then thaw out to put into the cider. So you got to time it well. I have bought at the grocery store frozen strawberries and thrown them in. You mentioned to watch out for fruit that has potassium sorbate in it. I would agree. Look what's on the label. Try to get organic, well-kept, well-farmed fruit is the best way to go, because that could kind of muck up things in your cider and suppress the fermentation in one direction or the other. So you have a couple options, and this is where I think it's part of avoiding the overthinking, at least in my mind with cider. I know we get really technical. You addressed a number of different people here, another podcast and a book and all that. But by and large, I'm just going to tell you from my viewpoint. I put it in the beginning, and I have even done a fruit addition at the end. Each time you add the fruit, if it's already gone through a primary fermentation, yes, the sugar in that fruit may kick up a vigorous fermentation again, because if there's any leftover yeast, they're going to say, oh, yummy, here's some sugar, let's chomp on it. And it will also kick up the alcohol in your finished cider. So something to watch out for. Another option is just to add juice from a fruit, like, pear from a fresh pressed pear from a place, or, some type of really refined pomegranate. I mean, people do everything here, and it really depends on what you want to have that finished cider to taste like. And if you're just going with a wild ferment here, you're going to be dealing with that. Then you're going to be introducing a secondary fruit that might have some yeast on it. And what will happen is, I think, when you add fruit towards the end of it, the fruit becomes a little bit more dominant, which could be a good thing if you like that. I like melding in the beginning so it has as much time as possible for the two different fruits, the apple and the blueberries, for instance, to really come and fuse together. So the cool thing is, either way you do it, it's going to be a win-win, as long as you're keeping everything clean and sanitary and being mindful of not introducing new yeast into your product, which could be difficult. You wrote here, I'm about podcast 149, where my friend interviewed me, mentioned my early days in CiderDays, and when I was fruit-oriented, yes, I always taught cider making, adding fruit. I want people to think that you could add anything to it. So right on. I'd probably still do that if I was teaching cider making regularly. You wanted to thank me for the podcast. It's been really helpful to hear from a wide variety of family stories and personal endeavors. You wrote, when your family went out to Pennsylvania this summer on vacation, you stopped at Plowman's Tasting Room in Gettysburg to pick up some single varietals, and you tried Stayman's Winesap, Gold Rush, and Arkansas Black, because you don't have much like that out there in your area of northern Indiana. Well, not yet. Not until you start making some cider, and then you'll have it. And then you have this one last question. How high should you fill up the carboys in the beginning? So we're looking at a headspace here. It's on the curved area where the neck of the glass carboy, if you can imagine, it's like any big old bottle, right? There's the initial neck, which is about 2 or 3 inches, and then it fans out and starts going down the side of the carboy. And where Christopher filled this up was just where it started coming up from the main widest area of the carboy. That was a good headspace. You chose really well there for an initial fermentation, because it could have gotten vigorous enough to kind of blow out of the top. And so you called that right. And now, once it kind of starts slowing down, don't rack it off. Just top it up a little bit and start closing in that airspace there to allow the primary to kind of settle down. Like I said, while ferment, it might last another month or two, because they're not the same kind of yeast as a cultured yeast. You're dependent upon a factor that you haven't really created a relationship with, which is your local ambient yeast. So top it up a little bit, I would say, going up into the neck of the carboy, because if it's not really vigorous and there's no more foam, you're pretty good to go. And then just watch over the next month. Maybe you want to rack over then, but if it's still fermenting, let it settle down. I would probably give it into December before I rack it over. Don't make it more work than necessary in this case. So you're looking really good there. And then you had one other question saying, oh, these both look different, one color versus the other. Not really sure why that is. I'm thinking that maybe you have, some different yeast in both of them, and that's what's kicking it over. That's how varying a wild yeast can be from one container to another, even though it's from the same juice. That will happen. So I hope I answered your questions, Christopher. Keep us posted. Best of luck with your first batch of cider. You are on the right track. You're reading all the right books. I'll mention this other book here. You refer to Beecham's book. This is Drew Beecham, the Everything Hard Cider book. And also Claude Jacquelaire's The New Cider Maker's Handbook. Of course, Claude Jacquelaire is going to be talking about his newest book, Cider Planet, at CiderDays 2.0. Perhaps I'll be able to get a chance to mention that you were discussing this piece here and see what else he has to say. I cannot wait to have that stretch of time to be able to hang out with fellow cider makers at CiderDays 2.0. And what a wonderful way to end this here part 2 on going to CiderDays 2.0, talking about all the cider celebrities, both in the bottle, in the glass, the people there, and the palms.
Not a lot of mention of pears, Rhea.
Well, Perry Pear, you know we're going to be having some Perry while we're there, so no worries, you're covered too.
Indeed.
Moving right along.
Yes, we are, Mr. Quince, because we got more to do and lots to plan for in the short amount of time before November 4th, and we have our first kickoff events to the big weekend, CiderDays 2.0. Once again, don't forget, get those cider dinner tickets while they last. It will be closing on Sunday, October 30th, and the other tickets are online. Go to ciderchat.com, look for CiderDays 2.0, or just Google CiderDays 2.0. And with that, I leave you here. This is Real Wind Caller and the Talking Palms, all looking forward to seeing you at CiderDays 2.0.
Strange apples, bitter sharp. Strange apples, juicy and ripe. Bop, 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 ba-da-dum-doo-doo-dop, bop, 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 ba-da-dum-doo-doo-dop. Who wants a tannenbaum?
I want a tannenbaum.
Who wants to pull them down?
I'm gonna pull them down. Hey, 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 apples,
bittersweet. Strange apples, hanging high. Got them strange apples. Forget the pie. Strange apples, squeeze them tight. Got them strange apples. Strange apples. Strange apples. Make them pop. Pop, 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 ba-da-doo-dee-da, pop, 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 ba-da-doo-dee-da.
Who wants a tannenbaum?
I want a tannenbaum.
Who wants to pull them down?
I'm gonna pull them down. Hey, 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 apples. Come and see. Plenty strange apples for you and me. Strange apples. Strange apples. Strange apples. Make them pop. Pop, pop, pop. Ba-da-doo-doo-da. Pop, pop, pop. Ba-da-doo-doo-da. Pop, pop, pop. Ba-da-doo-doo-da. Pop, pop, pop. Pop, 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 pop.
Yeehaw!